Welcome to On the Record. I'm Jalen Jones. Republican Luke Farley ran on a promise to make elevators great again. As the North Carolina Labor Commissioner, he's worked to dig out of an elevator inspection backlog. He's also looking to ramp up safety inspections in factories and warehouses as more people die from falling equipment. WRAL state government reporter Doran sat down with Farley in a factory in Mebane to talk about a whole range of issues. Make sure you check to see if you like this video and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more content you're not going to get anywhere else. Here's that conversation.
Are there, specific reasons why we're seeing this increase in struck by? I mean, is it just the shift to more warehousing kind of centers in the state, or what's behind this?
That's what we think the data is showing. Yeah, so the struck by accidents come in two categories. One is construction, front end loaders, dump trucks, things like that. And then the other component is what we call general industry, which would be things like where we are today, warehousing. The construction component of those workplace deaths has stayed relatively constant. We're seeing the growth in general industry, which we think is just overall part of a growth in logistics and warehousing operations in North Carolina. I mean, you drive up and down 40 or 85, and there's one of these popping up everywhere. Distribution centers, here in this county, Food Lion's building like a 1.5 million square foot facility. You see UPS, Amazon, and so it's really that's what's driving it, and that's where we need to get the numbers down.
So some of these big companies that you mentioned with these, multi-hundreds of thousands of square feet warehouses, what can they do to help protect their workers? I mean, is it just putting in systems like this, or are there other things that they can start doing to protect safety?
There's a lot of great technology out there now meant to drive down struck by accidents. So, as you see here today at ABB, they've got sort of state-of-the-art forklifts that are guided by electricity underground so that they don't deviate and hit people. But there's other things. There's backup alarms. There's motion sensors. There's so much out there that they can do if they're willing to go above and beyond sort of the bare minimum to protect their workers.
And, you mentioned that obviously the first year is going to be educational outreach. Second year is target enforcement. Something that we've reported on, I don't think anyone has been shy about talking about, is the vacancies in state government, and obviously your department is facing that as well. How do you triage that and decide, okay, I have, only this limited pool of regulators and inspectors, I'm going to send these people to focus on these issues, these people to focus on these issues. How do you decide how to do that?
We're very much a data-driven agency, right? I get a monthly briefing, basically real-time stats on workplace injuries in North Carolina. And we use that to decide what kind of enforcement we're going to have. You're right, we have limited resources. We can't be everywhere all at one time, so we have to be smart about where we send our inspectors. But this trend that we're trying to address, the struck by accidents, is alarming, right? The leader in workplace injuries in North Carolina for years was something different. It was falls from heights. And over 2 years, we've seen these numbers shift to struck by accidents. And so that tells us that's where we need to deploy our resources to drive down work.
And just so that I know, since you're looking at this data, I mean, is it that there are fewer people who are falling? Have there been improvements there? Or is it just that these struck by accidents have spiked so much?
They've spiked. And again, we think that that is a result of sort of the changing economy in North Carolina and a growth in logistics and warehousing. And so, we're going to use what limited resources we have to try to bring that down with, again, a year of education. We want everybody to know these are a problem. This is how you fix them. And we're going to give employers the opportunity to get their own house in order, so to speak. But at the end of this year, make it very clear, the targeted enforcement is coming. And so either folks bring down those injuries and deaths themselves, or we're going to do it through enforcement. And we're in that educational year. We're really trying to raise awareness. But after that, it's time for us to step in an enforcement way and bring those numbers down.
And that means fines and fees for violations?
Yes, citations and penalties that go along with them. That's what is the result of an inspection and their violations.
Let's talk about, like you mentioned, limited resources, vacancies, limited workforce, but something that's been a huge problem for North Carolina for years was the elevator inspections. I mean, WRAL did a whole investigation into how out of date a lot of elevator inspections were, as thousands, and you've come in and cleared that backlog. How'd you make that work?
Well, you're right, it was a problem. So about at its peak, it was about 1 in 5 elevators was not being inspected annually. And so the first way you fix that is through leadership and say, It's unacceptable for us to have a program where we only are effective about 80% of the time, right? 20% going uninspected, meaning we're only 80% of our goal. And that's just not an attitude I have about anything. 80% is not meeting your goal. 100% is meeting your goal. So I came in and said that this is a problem that needs to be solved, and we're going to put effort towards doing it. And we're going to do it in two ways. First, we're going to get more efficient and productive, and we're going to send the message in the department that 80% is just not good enough. The taxpayers and the citizens have an expectation that this will be done 100% every year. And so it's about setting that goal. It's about finding efficiencies and productivity, right? Nobody had looked at this in a while. How do we make our inspectors more effective and productive? How do we make sure that the workloads are evenly balanced so that some parts of the state aren't having too many inspections and some too few, in improving processes? But it also required additional resources, right? I mean, I'm not the kind of person who thinks money is the solution to every government problem, but there are instances where you're under-resourced. And in our agency, our salaries were not competitive with the private sector. And so we needed to pay better to retain and attract the best inspectors we can. You have to have 4 years of private sector elevator trade experience just to be an inspector. And so salaries that are not competitive with the private sector are not going to get people to leave with that 4-year experience. So we passed our Make Elevators Great Again Act with the help of the North Carolina General Assembly. That gave us some additional resources, but interestingly, at no additional cost to the taxpayers. So the Elevator and Amusement Device Bureau is a totally receipt-supported bureau, meaning we don't take tax dollars, we charge user fees, and I have to run it like a small business. And so we had to figure out how to be more efficient, but also how to have the resources to attract the talent we needed. And together, we drove those numbers down. And in fact, in my first year in office, we inspected 5,000 more elevators than the previous year.
And I mean, is that just a matter of different management style? I mean, that's a massive increase.
Yeah.
How do you make that happen?
It's a both and. It's setting the goal and saying, we've got to do better with this. The public expects it. Then it's improving the processes. We looked at the efficiency and productivity of each inspector, who had capacity to do more, who was overworked, who needed to have, we call it a route. So you're responsible for 600 to 800 devices and whether those needed to be rebalanced. And then we just came up with a better pay scale. I mean, because we now have these additional resources, we can pay more competitively with the market, and it'll get people to stay, and it incentivizes people to do a great job. So it's kind of a both and that's my approach to government across the board. I'm seldom ever going to say, we just need more money, we just need more positions. Usually what we need to do is to start and say, how do we improve processes? How do we get more efficient? How do we provide real leadership? And once we've exhausted those things, then we look to, do we need more resources? And clearing this elevator backlog is a perfect example of just that very thing, where we did both and at the same time.
You've obviously only been in office for a year. Where do you see the rest of your tenure going, whether it's 3 years or however many more years? I mean, remember it was a few months ago you were in Taiwan.
Yeah.
I can't remember the previous labor commissioner going to Taiwan or anything comparable to that. I mean, are you trying to elevate this office in a new kind of way, or how do you see this going?
First of all, I'm usually pretty good at picking up on elevator puns, but I missed that one until you said it, because I feel like I've heard every elevator joke in the book. What we are looking to do is make this office more effective for the citizens of North Carolina. We want this to be the most effective Department of Labor that there's ever been. There are lots of positions in state government, but there's only one whose constitutional responsibility is to look after the health, safety, and material well-being of the working people of North Carolina. And that's the Labor Commissioner, and that's how I see my job, right? We want workers to be well-paid, safe, not discriminated against. We are fighting against child labor, but we also want North Carolina to be a place that is a magnet for good-paying jobs. So you mentioned Taiwan. That's why I went there, is to promote North Carolina. And the people I was with probably got sick of hearing about North Carolina, but I never got sick of telling them about North Carolina, because in this environment, right, there's a lot of talk of reshoring jobs. Well, they're thinking about that in Taiwan. I want them to reshore their jobs right here in places like this to bring good manufacturing jobs back to North Carolina.
Thanks again, Will. What an amazing conversation. That is WRAL State Government Reporter Will Doran. This is On the Record. Make sure you have liked this video and you're subscribed for more content you're not going to get anywhere else. Have any questions for our amazing NC Capitol team, make sure you go to WRAL.com/reported. We look at that every day. Thank you guys so much for watching.